Hi, welcome back to our podcast, Books Don't Review Themselves. I'm Jessica.
And I'm Kim.
And today we are going to be talking about The 10,000 Doors of January by Alix E. Harrow. So I'm going to just read a quick synopsis of what the book is about. In the early 1900s, a young woman embarks on a fantastical journey of self-discovery after finding a mysterious book in this captivating and lyrical debut. In a sprawling mansion filled with peculiar treasures, January Scalar is a curiosity herself. As the ward of the wealthy Mr. Locke, she feels little different from the artifacts that decorate the halls, carefully maintained, largely ignored, and utterly out of place. Then she finds a strange book, a book that carries the scent of other worlds and tells a tale of secret doors, of love, adventure, and danger. Each page turn reveals impossible truths about the world, and January discovers a story increasingly entwined with her own.
I will read you my first paragraph of my written review. I had, wow. The 10,000 Doors of January is a lyrical letter written to book lovers everywhere, reminding us to never stop hoping and to never lose our imaginations or our voices. Yeah, I really enjoyed this one.
Yes, I know you really did.
Yes, I don't think you did as much.
And here's the thing. The writing I thought was really well. I thought the description was really well. The story I thought was different and interesting. I just felt it's not something I typically would read. Mm-hmm. It's not something I would typically pick up. And it took me a little bit to get into it.
Okay.
I would say I was probably at I was probably closer to 30% before I felt like it started picking up.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I understand like there does need to be probably a little bit of a slower pace in the beginning to give background. Mm-hmm. To me, it was a little bit of a slower.
I can see that totally.
Start for me personally.
Even though she finds a book early on, even though she finds a door early on in the book, it still takes a bit before like the adventure really begins.
Right.
I can totally see that.
And I guess the other thing, and I have mentioned this in several podcasts, that I read a lot of other people's reviews to see if there's things that I want to bring up and say, oh, yeah, this is a good point. I didn't think of that. And one of the things that I had read was that people compare this book to, is it Sean McGuire?
I don't think that's how it is. But I always say that. I think it's wrong though.
Okay.
Shannon. It's
the Wayward,
S-E-A-N.
The Wayward Children series. A lot of people compared it to that. And it seemed like the people that this book was just raved about. I think this was people were waiting for this book.
Okay.
It was raved about, but the people that seemed to kind of have the same feelings as me about it said that it reminded them of like The Wayward Children, but it just was executed in a way that wasn't as intriguing to them. And they all kind of had the same opinion as I, where it wasn't bad, it was written well, the story was okay, it
wasn't what they were expecting.
It wasn't necessarily what I was expecting when I read it.
And that's amusing. I didn't read any of the ones. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Other people's thoughts, but it's really amusing because I really enjoy McGuire. So
yeah,
which would make sense.
And I think someone had said something along the lines of, it didn't really seem to ever pick up for them, and they said something about maybe it's just because they're heartless, or whatever. And it made me laugh a little bit because a lot of the stuff I typically read is very heavy and very violent and disturbing. So sometimes when I read something lighter
and you don't enjoy it,
I end up not enjoying it, not because it wasn't written well or whatever. It's just because I'm in a pattern, of reading.
I asked my husband last night.
Certain type of book.
So last night, my husband and I were watching Project Runway. And these people were crying and they felt bad because they were missing their family or whatever reasons. And I looked at him and I'm like, am I a psychopath? I don't feel this way. I'm like, please fast forward it because I can't handle these people.
See, and that's how I feel because I like The Voice. That's something like my mother-in-law watches religiously and she'll text me and be like, oh, are you watching The Voice? Mm-hmm. But I am so sick and tired of before every performance, it's some sap story. Yeah. Literally. And some of them, it's like, okay, I really do feel terrible. But other ones, it's like, oh, I I was bullied and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you know,
everyone has had issues in their life.
Right. You know, when I hear about, God, what show was it? It was America's Got Talent.
Okay.
I can't remember. I think his name was Cody Lee or something. And he, I believe, is autistic.
Okay.
He's blind as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so his mom helped him out to the piano. And when he played the piano and sang, beautiful. I cried.
Okay.
I cried. Because that to me was like beautiful and like something worth crying about.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of these other shows where it's just like,
I feel like it's gotten to the point that they feel like they need to have a story.
Right. Like people won't, and it won't matter
unless they have a story to go with
right.
it. And it's just like, just let your work speak for itself.
Right.
If I was a judge, good thing I'm not a judge, because if I was a judge on a reality show, as soon as someone started that, I'd be like, you need to go. I'm like, you don't even need to perform for me.
Yeah.
I'm like, you are here for your talents. If you want to tell me your story, you write a book. And then I'll decide if I want to read your story or not.
See, and that's where I felt like when I watched this America's Got Talent, that Cody Lee, he couldn't really do that. Like his
mm-hmm.
mom kind of talked about his health issues and whatever a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But then when he played and sung, it was like, okay, that's how he communicates. Like that's how he can get everything he's feeling out.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time, it's too much. And I think that's where I enjoyed this book in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
But with what I've been reading lately, it was just...
you just couldn't jump. You couldn't jump into it.
Yeah, and it's like, even I was thinking about this. I'm like, even with like the Harry Potter series, there's a little bit more like violence
to it.
Maybe?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm. And I was fine that there wasn't violence. I mean, there is some violence in here, but it's not bad. And what's funny too is when I read, a lot of times, since we do read thrillers and stuff like that, or horror books,
yep.
Well, horror books can be descriptive, and thrillers can too, but if a book is overly descriptive,
you start skimming.
I start skimming.
And that's what I found myself doing a lot with some of this, because mm-hmm. like I said, some parts were just so slow that I was like, oh my mm-hmm. God.
And I loved it. I was entranced with every word. I did. It was just like, normally with my Kindle too, I read this on the Kindle. I rarely bookmark any passages or anything. I probably have like 50 pages bookmarked on my Kindle because I'm like, oh my God, that's beautiful. Oh my God, that's life affirming. Oh,
yeah.
Which was it was crazy. But,
and I wonder too, if, like where we have a difference in age.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if that could be something as well that
maybe.
I'm just not.
Maybe I'm getting a little bit more
soft
friendly.
With age.
Exactly. Nicer to people. Even though I don't show it outwardly inside, I'm like, yeah, people aren't so bad, I guess.
And again, I really want to iterate that it was written well.
It was.
The description,
edited.
The description was good.
Mm-hmm.
It was very good description. If it's not a story that is gonna like engross you or something you're really gonna like, it doesn't matter necessarily how they describe something.
And this also, if you like this genre,
right.
know if you enjoy fantasy or magical realism or whatever you want to call this, you know that already.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do, there is a really good chance that you will really enjoy this book. If you don't, there's a good chance you won't enjoy it as much.
Right, and again, that's something that the author. There's nothing they can do about that.
No,
it doesn't matter how they write it.
And what's great with reading, then you find out maybe you don't like this, which is fine. Mm-hmm. And maybe you'll try another book or two. Maybe you won't. Whatever. Mm-hmm. That's the great thing about reading. For me, the other thing that I was talking about briefly with you before we start talking is this reminded me of Cloud Atlas. I can't think of the author's name. I'll have it linked below. But what's funny, and it reminds me of Cloud Atlas because it was the writing was very intense for that book. There was lots of different worlds, and it was similar in this book. But I could not. I did not finish the book. I watched the movie, and I watched the movie before I read the book. And even when I watched the movie the first time, I only watched it one time with my husband. It finished, and we looked at each other, and we were like, "What the F did we just watch?"
Right. I don't even think I got through the movie. I'm pretty sure we either rented it or bought it or something because we were a part of the same book club.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't.
So with me saying that, it reminds me of Cloud Atlas. And if you didn't like Cloud Atlas, don't be scared though, because it was way better. It just had similarities in ways, but it was like
maybe the theme,
and it was easier to understand. And you're going to different worlds at different times, and all the stories are intertwining and coming back together. So that's why it reminded me of Cloud Atlas. And I love stories like that. Like, that's why I love Quentin Tarantino. I mean, maybe he's not the best person in the world, but I enjoy his movies and stuff. And the reason why I enjoy his movies so much is because it's a whole bunch of different stories that are intertwined and then they come together at the end. And I just love, like, I've seen many of his movies numerous times because I like, already knowing what's going to happen, but then I can kind of see it more so.
See, and again, with Harry Potter, that's something I enjoy too. Like, I enjoy rewatching and rereading the books because now that I know the big, like you said, where if there's a lot of description, you skim it because especially if it's something where you're eager to know what's next, you end up skimming and then you miss things. And it really made me realize that is one year for Christmas, I got Harry Potter's Trivia Pursuit. And I was like reading through these cards thinking like, oh, this is going to be a cinch. I did not know a lot of them. A lot of them. And I'm like, how don't I know this? And it's because they were just those little facts that were left in the book. And if you had read the book only once, you're going to miss a lot of this stuff. Yeah. And the thing is J.K. Rowling did a really good job of taking these little tidbits, and you can go like on Pottermore, and she has like little short stories about like this or, and that's something, like you said, where it makes a book more enjoyable, maybe the second or third time.
And I remember maybe it was last year when they had the Harry Potter event at Barnes and Noble, was it, that you and Josh went to?
Yes. And it was like two years ago, I think, 2 or 3 years ago.
And you're saying there's like going to be trivia and stuff. And I knew personally, I'm like, I read all the books. I watched all the movies. I enjoyed them.
It was hard.
I knew I wouldn't know any of the trivia because it is so detail oriented that I wouldn't have known it.
Yes, it was so hard. And it was like things that I didn't even think about, like how old is Dumbledore? Or, I mean, I can't even think of some of the questions now, but like I had that Trivia Pursuit and I'm like, I can't answer these. I'm like, I'm not going to find anybody to play this with me. Like, no one's going to know these details.
I'd like maybe know one out of every,
and
75
I'm
questions.
lucky now that like I have coworkers that love, the Harry Potter series and stuff. That's I think one of the things that makes that book so magical to me. And so maybe if this is something I read again, maybe it would have that feeling. Because I know when I read the first Harry Potter book, I liked it, but it was slower compared to all the other books, and so, but now when I read it, I enjoy every bit of it. Yeah. So, this could definitely be one of those things where maybe if I read it again, I would think differently of it. Or maybe if I read it slower or,
And as much as I did enjoy it, I don't think I would read it again. Just because there's so many books out there to read.
See, and that's the thing. I don't think I will. Because I just don't think it's something that I care enough about to reread.
And if Harrow comes out with another book, I will definitely read it. I will give it a chance and see. Would you, or would you maybe let me read it first and then?
It probably kind of depends what the storyline is. If it's something that sounds interesting, I'm all for it. It's not necessarily something I'm going to be like putting on my watch list.
Yeah. That's the fun thing though, and I enjoy when we don't like the book as much the same way,
Right.
Then you learn different things and you're like, oh yeah, I can see it that way.
And like when we were reviewing The Girl on the Porch, we make mention to that a lot because when I read it and I finished it, I'm like, what the fuck?
You're like 1 star, if that.
I'm like, what the hell? And it's not like I can sit there and say, oh, this was just such a shitty writing and the story was stupid and whatever. I did not feel that way at all. But when we talked about it and you brought up some points that I didn't consider, I'm like, oh, yeah, maybe I do like this more. So it literally did change my mind on just because I was thinking about it in a different way. But I don't feel that way about this one.
Yeah, no problem with that. If you, like I said before, if you enjoyed fantasy, you'll probably want to give this one a read. If you don't, then there's so many other books out there. Give one of those a read. I give it 5 stars. What are you?
I'd probably give it like 2.5, 3, because I don't want to give it a low star because I don't have an issue with the writing and whatever, and I don't want to I feel bad doing that to the author because it's like there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not my cup of tea. So I would probably give it 3 just because I'm kind of indifferent. Yeah. I have no issues with it. It's just not my cup of tea.
Well, as always, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, tell your friends.
Yeah, and if you have anything that you want us to read, There's no guarantees we'll read it because we do have a very packed schedule. But if you have anything that you want us to look at or read, or
if you're an author who does thrillers or horror, that seems to
we're
be...
a big fan.
We probably will be.
So, yeah, and comment down below. Otherwise, keep a lookout for our upcoming podcasts.
Yeah. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.